Dear all, a very warm welcome to the Havells Insignia Presents edX, a series by Realty Masterclass. Friends, edX Talks is a unique initiative dedicated to facilitate the development of an ecosystem for world-class designers in India. The one-of-a-kind architecture and design talk show aims to enable the process of collaboration with the best in the industry so as to position architects, designers, and manufacturers as partners offering complete solutions and not as mere providers of a product or a service. I'm Sapna Srivastava, editor Realty Plus magazine, and let's begin with a brief introduction of Realty Plus.
Some people are born to show the world which path to choose in a crisis. Some brands are born to do the same. And during the times of challenge, the stalwarts of Indian real estate industry have chosen to do just that by showing others the way to finding opportunities even amidst a crisis. By showing the world how to go about delivering on promises even amidst adversity. Success doesn't just happen, it happens by design, by pushing the boundaries, by raising the bar. Days of creating a vision and nights of bringing it to life. Knowing that pictures are worth 1,000 words and every word makes a difference. It's doing the research, trusting your instinct and finishing what you started. For the past 17 years, Realty Plus has been turning obstacles into opportunities, keeping the industry informed on the latest developments. Innovating to inspire debate and discussion. Bringing forth the perspectives of industry leaders. Honoring hard work and achievement. Keeping the industry connected. This is what we are built on. This is what we are building. We are Realty Plus and we lead the way.
So friends, this was a brief snippet of what Realty Plus is, its products and its initiatives. And now moving on to the program of the day, I welcome Mr. Vivek Yadav, Senior Vice President, Havells India Limited, to share his views on this edX series presented by Havells Insignia. Let me give a brief profile of Mr. Yadav. He is an industry veteran with over 31 years of experience in electrical and automation. Having worked in all domains from residential, commercial, industrial, and infrastructure, he has extensive experience in products and solutions from circuit protections in low voltage and medium voltage to automation in industries and homes. Mr. Yadav is currently heading Havells domestic circuit protection, electrical wiring accessories, and home automation business, along with projects and enterprise business, which cuts across all business verticals in Havells. So, Mr. Yadav, I hand it over to you now.
Yeah, thank you, Sapna. Thank you so much. Okay, so this series of edX we've restarted after a brief break because of the pandemic. We've already had 3 international designers, and today we have a very good personality, an Indian personality who's achieved a lot in this field, and of course Sapna will be introducing him shortly. Before that, I would like you to know a little bit more about Havells and also a bit more about this program and why we have this program. So before I give more details on that, I would request Sapna to run Havells AV to tell you what Havells is all about. It's not just a few product lines, a plethora of product lines that we have in this industry where we serve not just residential customers but industrial infrastructure customers as well. So Sapna, can we have the AV, please?
For more than 6 decades, Havells India Limited has been focusing on building a better future. A future where technology is used to drive progress, improve business outcomes, and create a better quality of life. Today, Havells stands tall in the FMEG sector as a major power distribution equipment manufacturer with a strong global footprint, owing to its innovative future-ready products for a wide spectrum of applications. With the acquisition of Lloyd in 2017, Havells has made a foray into high-potential consumer durable segment with offerings of air conditioners, LED televisions, washing machines, refrigerators and dishwashers. The new synergy further complements the brand's deeper into homes vision. Havells owns some of the most prestigious global brands like Crabtree, Lloyd, Standard and Rio. Its global network constitutes over 5,000 professionals across its offices. As part of its Make in India philosophy, Havells is manufacturing 97% of its products in-house. With 14 state-of-the-art, fully automated manufacturing plants located across India, Havells offers superior quality and globally benchmarked products to its customers. Havells has set up a large distribution network to set new benchmarks in prompt delivery and service to customers. Over 11,000 dealers, 150,000 retailers and 700 plus Havells Galaxy exclusive brand showrooms across the country are helping customers to choose from its wide range of products. Havells has a robust supply chain management system with 31 warehouses located pan-India. The meticulous forecasting and demand planning delivers seamless tracking system. Havells is the first FMEG company to offer doorstep service, offering a seamless post-purchase experience. It has the largest service network with 800 plus service points covering 441 towns, 24/7 across India. Havells Center for Research and Innovation, CRI, at Noida, with a team of highly qualified engineers and designers, continuously work towards creating differentiated and innovative products while adhering to stringent quality norms at par with international standards. Havells products are certified by nationally accredited laboratories such as CPRI and ERDA. Havells has a strong in-house IT vertical which develops innovative technology platforms to support its robust service and supply chain management system. Growing together is ingrained in the ethos of Havells and has resulted in it launching many innovative and profitable schemes for its dealer community. Havells has strong credentials in B2B and large government projects as well, such as lighting up Kolkata railway station and partnering with NBCC India Limited to beautify and transform the night view of India's heritage monuments like Humayun's tomb, as it believes in the philosophy of spearheading the progress of the nation without ignoring the past. Havells has taken giant strides to create an innovative world full of possibilities, not only for itself, but also for all its channel partners and customers, with a commitment to improve people's lives and help create a better global society. Havells is inspiring the world and making a difference.
Okay, so as you saw the video, there are a number of product lines that we take to our customers. And taking this to customers would not be possible without the help of the influencer community. So last year, when we were debating how to engage with the specifier community, we came up with this idea of creating a platform, a program called Havells Insignia. And under this program, we said we will bring this community together for the benefit of creating an ecosystem, benefit of all the influencers, our customers, where we not just bring them together, share knowledge, engage with them, and create an ecosystem where there is a development of this community, development of the interaction between industry and the influencer community. We are going to use a 4I framework for this. When I say 4I, means incubation, interaction, influence, and innovation. And under these four heads, we'll create properties. One such property is edX, which is under the interaction amongst the 4I. And the other would be in the form of innovation contest, redesigning of cities, creating monuments from the ruins, or white papers or yearbooks, which would have the top of the line projects, outstanding projects which could form part of this. And these trend books and white papers would be used by the community for reference point for future trends. So these four platforms that we are creating, edX, as I said, is one of them, would be of course dealt with partners like Realty Masterclass, something like yearbook, which will have annual publication for cutting edge design ideas, innovation, and viewpoints, which will also set the agenda for design themes for the coming year, which will also have globally benchmarked products by leading specifiers across the globe. Similarly, white papers would be used for educating audience to bring to light a new or different perspective, delve deeper into issues, trends, and policies which could be related to residential and commercial infrastructure, causes that experts feel strongly about, and deep dive into their implications and benefits. Similarly, when I said, contest, it could be redesigning a new city. It could be looking at historical monuments in a different manner altogether. And, post-COVID, how the social architecture is changing, how the norms today for developing new architecture are changing in the new scenario. And I said, reusing the ruins, how you can create monuments out of them. We are also looking at rewarding the best in the specifier community. How their work could be recognized, so there would be awards as well. So this is the overall program as we have envisaged, and we would be working closely with an invited set of specifiers who will be part of this program. And of course, with the involvement of the larger community, we will take this program to this entire community over the period of time. Today it is virtual. As things improve, it will be in physical format as well. So this is from my side, Sapna. Let's take the program forward. Over back to you.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Yadav. It is time for collaboration, between the entire community, the stakeholders of the design and building construction fraternity, including the end users. So thanks, Mr. Yadav, for sharing that brief on various Havells initiatives in this direction, including this first of its kinds design talk series, and also for setting the tone of the day. So as you rightly said, now let's bring on stage the star of the day. Joining us is architect and urbanist Madhav Raman, co-founder of New Delhi-based design practice Anagram Architects. Let me give a brief introduction of our speaker of the day. Established in 2004, Anagram Architects is an internationally recognized top emerging practices in the world with a commitment towards delivering deeply contextual designs that encourage sustainable lifestyles. Madhav's interest in cultural histories and urban economics adds depth to to his practice as he brings insight and experience in transit, urban ecologies, multidisciplinary strategies, and new technologies to the projects. Over the years, the practice has garnered much international acclaim and has featured in the International Architecture Biennial 2010 in Rotterdam and Biennial of Design 2012 held in Slovenia. So that was a brief introduction of our speaker of the day, Architect Raman. Thanks for being here with us today. I hand it over to you now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sapna. Thank you also, Havells, and thank you all really for taking the time out to listen to me. I'll just share my screen. Am I visible? Is the screen visible?
Yes, you can see.
So thank you for the opportunity, like I said, and the kind introduction. I head a practice called, I'm a partner in a practice called Anagram Architects. And we've been in business now from 2004 officially, but really speaking, the story started a little while earlier when Vaibhav and I were friends in college. So I'll tell you a little bit about ourselves as we go along. I've titled this talk Design for the Proto-Cities, Disaggregations of the Future. So I look at the subtitles first. I think disaggregation is like a complex way and perhaps a slightly less negative way of saying falling apart. Thanks to the pandemic, I think this idea or notion of things around us falling apart has become quite relevant. And many of us have these notions fill our heads. But I'd also like to think about how we live our lives. You see, architecture is considered an urban practice. It's meant for urban spaces. And therefore, very many times architects tend to think of the urban as an ultimate final state of living. Whereas my argument in this talk is really speaking going to be that there never really is a single end resulting city. Cities are better understood in stages of development, and therefore the idea that designs and architecture and architects and urban designers are involved in the making of a proto-city, that it is always just short of being that ultimate city that we all seem to envisage, purely because that ultimate view keeps changing. So let me start with a little bit about, instead of starting off by talking about how we are falling apart, let me start by how Vaibhav and I got together. So we met in 1996 in college. We became very close friends. We did a lot of theater while we were in college. And then that deep friendship evolved into a business partnership where we decided to start Anagram Architects around 2001. By 2004, we had formalized the firm and we were practicing. And that's how we've continued in the past 20 years. So what I'm going to tell you is basically based on my understanding on what all we've been doing in the past 20 years and what that means for us. I'm also going to, in this talk, therefore project for another 20 years. So a lot of what I'm going to say is going to span 20 years in the back and 20 years forward. And I'll hope you'll stay with me on that journey. So when just around the time when we got together, really speaking, in many ways, the world started growing apart. Now, this is a snapshot. In 1990s, there were 174 countries if you opened an atlas. By about 2000, because of various geopolitical conflicts, that number had increased to 195. So you find 195 flags in the UN in 2000. But if you were to take an internet search right now and find out how many country internet domains, because now you realize post-pandemic even more so that space is no longer just the physical, space is also the virtual. So how are divisions in the world happening in the virtual is that there are 250 country internet domains in 2021. So now that to me is a huge change if you just look at the past, say 25, 30 odd years. And architecture in various ways has responded in an evolutionary way to that. So if you were to look at global architecture and the architecture of Sir Norman Foster or Richard Rogers in the 90s, or if you start now looking at the other more global practices like that of Zaha Hadid architects or Bjarke Ingels group, through the past few decades, you've seen that architecture has become more urban. It's become more global. It's definitely more high tech, and there is an emphasis on architecture being cool. So if you were to look at the 70s and 60s, there was a strong notion that architecture was solving problems. And now that has kind of been replaced with this idea that architecture not only has to solve problems, it has to do it in a cool way. So there's a certain, say, cultural traction that architecture seeks in being cool. But the fact that architecture is in cities means that urbanization is actually what all of us should also be looking at. And if you look at the urbanization in the past 20 years across the world, it's really not an urbanization. There is actually a destabilization of rural space in the world, and there is a deruralization by exodus. So there are mass movements of people in distress who are moving away from rural environments into city environments, city-like environments. And they're not doing this in the traditional way that we imagine that my urban migration happens, seeking opportunity. It's very often means to escape distress. So you have three types of such communities that spring up as population segments and constituencies and demographics and so on and so forth, which are these three: the ethnic refugee, the climatic refugee, and the livelihood refugee. The livelihood refugee, of course, is the one that has been of most recent concern during the pandemic. So it's my argument that as things stand in 2021, we are actually now looking at ourselves as being a post-globalized world. So we've gone through colonialism, gone through liberalization, become part of a global economy, a global space. But now we've reached a point where things are starting to break apart and we are post-globalized. So one is trying to discover what that post-globalized reality is like and is going to be. The second is we are hyper connected. So from the point that we were trying to take steamership boats from Europe to Asia during colonial times to now where we are thinking of building hyperloops, physical communication has changed radically, but also the virtual communication has completely exploded. So we are connected in so many different socio-cultural economic ways. And yet there are certain barriers to physical connections that are now happened post-pandemic. And of course, the reality that we can all, as a human species, cannot escape anymore is that we are well and truly climate changed. So what does this mean in terms of actual way things are right now? So you'll all see that there's a general tendency from a post-globalized reality that all nations seem to be clustering around these three ideas of ethnic nationalism, economic nationalism, and ecological nationalism. That is, that the kind of ecological assets that a country owns, or is it basically the assets of ecology that fall within the territorial boundaries of a country are now more and more becoming being thought of as assets that belong to that country and can be exploited by that country. Whereas, as we all know, ecology does not pay any respect to national boundaries. Connected silos, we are hyper connected, so we are getting more and more introverted in our ways of living. We're becoming more gated, more guarded about our neighbors. We post pandemic, of course, you know, the term bio bubble has become very frequently used. But equally, we're trying to create pockets of global economic activities that are cut away from the local economy. So we're trying to create ideas of free trade zones while emphasizing a certain self-reliance and self-containment of national economies. And of course, now more and more, when Wi-Fi at a certain level is being handed out free, but even there in cafes and so on and so forth, you'll start finding that hotspots and online zonings are being created in terms of how we are able to access the internet. In terms of climate change, finally, we are looking at biospheric breakdowns, and these involve things that are coming out of the ground. So geospheric depletions, things that are being put into the atmosphere, pollution, so atmospheric brown clouding, hydrospheric mayhem, so sea change, tsunamis, sorry, not tsunamis, but huge superstorms, rains that cause urban flooding, these sorts of things in the hydrosphere. And of course, we are losing species by the minute. So there's huge biodiversity loss. Let's look at India closely. India as a population in the past 20 years has basically been stabilized as we are contributing about 15% of global population, and we'll continue to do so for the next 20 years. But if you look at the rate at which population has increased, we've added a third of our population in the past 20 years. But we don't intend, we're looking at a declining population. Possibly by 2050, 2055, we'll probably have a stabilized population of 1.6. and decline post that. So how does this population live? So as you can see, in the past 20 years, there's been a shift of about 15% of population to so-called urban areas. Now, my argument is there's no such defined understanding of something that is purely urban. Most of India is living currently and has been in situations of being almost cities. So the gray band in the middle is the extent to which we can define urban. So some of us put a very high value on, the metropolitanism of a city or the cosmopolitanism of a city. Others are saying that, okay, if it has Wi-Fi, it is urban. By definition, that urban commerce is possible. So then you have to dip into the rural bandwidth too. So there is this expanding band of what we call almost cities and what I call proto cities. And this is a shot of what that looks like. So this is what India's urbanization is like. It's a lot of in-betweens with clusters around some things that are the most evolved form of city living in that region. And therefore, you'll find urban settlement is actually fractalized settlement of this kind. So this is a Google Earth image of a stretch from Delhi to Himalayas, which for all intents and purposes for a city like Delhi is the closest form of nature, pure nature that we have, our reserve forests in the Himalayas. So you'll see this entire range of different proto-cities and different stages of evolution spread across the entire valley of the Ganga right up to the foothills of the Himalayas. And this is what it looks like from the air. So this is a photo of Dwarka, but any city of any size in India, whether it is a small town, a district headquarters, or even the capital of the city, which is the second largest urban agglomeration in the world, you'll only find not more than 30% of it can be correctly called formal, where people are living in stable conditions, which are part of their master plan. They're participating in formal economic activities. Not more than 25 to 30% of any urban settlement in India has this, whereas a burgeoning big amount of 70 to 75% actually live in a disarray of informality in the middle, which brings me to my city, which is New Delhi, which is why I define it as the big cheese, because it's like cheese. There's lots of holes in the master plan which accommodate very many numbers of our citizens in urban villages, in slums, in various forms of informal settlement and occupations. Whereas the policy and the legal terms with which one interacts with the city is restricted to only 25, which is the cheese part of the cheese and not the whole part of the cheese. And this is the end result of this form of city making and city building, is that we end up in these situations where, try as we might, even though we know how bad air pollution is for all of us, regardless of where we live in our city, we are not able to control it. So Delhi continues to be called the big V's. It's not only the big cheese. And that's essentially because we are now dealing with collective problems from which we are kind of not being able to think our way out of. So with that, I'd like to show you some 6 or 7 of our projects very quickly, pointing out certain specific things that we learned, which help us now start thinking what about the future proto-city, what is going to happen in the next 20 years in our cities and settlements, really. I don't want to keep calling it cities. So this is a project that we did in the mid 2000s. It was very early in our practice. And this is a small office. It's 50 square meters, 5 meters by 10 meters. At the edge of Safdarjung Enclave Extension, which is essentially a formal colony part of the master plan, but it sits on the edge of a part of the city beyond a park, which lies Humayunpur, which is an urban village, which is about, say, 750 years old, but finds no part in the master plan. And therefore, there is this kind of edge of a city. A lot of these projects that I show you are in various ways built on edges, because that's where you discover the most about the nature of the spaces on either side of the edge. So this is a certain edge we have in our city between a formal city and informal city. Our site occupied the corner site over there, what you see in black. Immediately, what one notices over here, if you can see my mouse as it travels, is that there is this red line. This thin red line is a very important part of circulation over here. which which is the common ground for the common place used by both the formal city and the informal city. So in many ways, this corner is activated by this movement of people. So it was very important for us to devise a design that was very, very conservative, gave maximum flexibility in the plan because of a tiny plot, but would respond to the movement of the people on the street. This also happened to be the western side of the site, the southwestern side, and therefore gained the most amount of heat. So we knew we needed to build that facade with this sort of intelligence. And this is what we came up with. Principle, it's a very simple parameter. I mean, it's a simple organization of masonry, which is a 6-brick module, a 9-brick module, sorry, a 6-brick module that turns 360 degrees every floor. But the structural strength of masonry comes from the fact that actually masonry, while we were taught in college, was a monolith. Masonry is actually a weaving of bricks together. And just like a weaver would be able to change the weave pattern, it's possible to do that in architecture quite effectively to achieve your purposes, which includes perforation for that interaction. It moves a certain texture on the wall that is kind of interesting when you walk past it. And it causes a lot of very interesting interactions between the inside and the outside based on light, ventilation, and thermal comfort. So these are a few photos. A diametrically opposite view can be taken on a different sort of edge. So this is something we finished just before the pandemic. And this is a completely introverted sense of a urban plot in a similar condition. There, the road's edge was with a very, very busy road, very close to an industrial estate, a lot of truck movements, a lot of heavy pollution vehicles movements on that road. And therefore, the family wanting a sort of introversion. We call this a cleft house because cleft means to break through. And that's basically what we've done if you look at the volumes of the house. Now, the reason why I talk about this is simultaneously in the past 20 years, there's been a change in which our families also find themselves. So this was usually plots of land we imagine are occupied by single families, but we all know that these number of residential units multiply. And as the generation changes, we've now got in India a form of a halfway between a joint family and a nuclear family. So many generations living together on a single plot, but living fairly independent, socially independent lives of each other. So an introverted house came to us as an idea, and so Cleft was born. And the idea here is to create a lot of interaction, a lot of light and ventilation. This is a naturally ventilated space across a courtyard, which is similar to a traditional courtyard, for a lot of interaction between the families. And very often these are things bedrooms usually have 3 blank walls and a small window because we feel we want television and so many other things in a bedroom. But very often now with technology, you don't need these. So you can actually enhance the interaction that people have within a house to kind of look at how our evolving families play themselves out. This is a plot in Greater Noida. Again, at the edge of what is a formal city, growing city. This is the very current edge of Delhi. And this is an artist who hired us to design a studio. And she has a very particular question for us. She said, why must I design a studio like a cave? Why can't it be a much more open where people can see me make my art rather than just a production space for my artwork? And she works on sculptures that are very, very large as well as art pieces that are very, very small. It's also a very strange-sided, trapezoidal site that we needed to look at. And we came up with this idea that usually we stack residences one on top of the other. But what if a single volume could offer multiple spaces based on an vertical uncoiling of space? So we actually had a ribbon of concrete that looped around itself and moved away from the neighbor's wall here. And it was supported by a steel structural framework with a lot of openable facade on it. And this is what the space looks like. The picture on the right is her residential area on the top floor. And the picture on the left is the main studio space. And the primary thing is this wall, which actually opens up to lead, because that's the side from which the monsoon wind comes in. So this actually helps keep, so this is not an air-conditioned space at all in Greater Noida, but it's constant. It has the ability to keep the temperature inside constant thanks to the thick thermal insulation by the walls and these sorts of innovations of allowing ventilation to be brought in to different parts of the building. Socially, this sort of open living has instigated something in her and Anita Dubey, our client. has started holding weekly cinema shows in her front lawn. She doesn't have a boundary wall, as you can see. And she's happy to have her neighbors who are also artists come and sit and view movies together in her front lawns. Um, this photo on the left is a staircase that just evolved out of the geometry of the building. When she became the curator of the Kochi Biennale a couple of years back, she invited us to design a pavilion at the Kochi Biennale, which we named Kudaram. And it's an interesting site because it's a abandoned industrial site. Now, as our cities evolve, the nature of manufacturing changes, we'll soon start finding a lot of sites that are brownfield, where we have to develop with a sense of history, with a sense of ecology, and with this idea that large parcels of land are now being re-released into the real estate market with these sorts of locations that are in the middle of the city. And we came up with this idea of creating a pavilion that was completely knocked down, disassemblable. This was built during the course of the Kerala floods, by the way. And I must commend the team that worked through the floods in order to build this. But the idea here was, what if architecture was not permanent? What if it was something that could be structurally kept up for a year or two, disassembled? Because as climate change poses a threat, Kerala floods being an example, a lot of our architecture needs to explore impermanence and impermanence, temporariness, and dislocation in much more interesting ways. So this is a pavilion for 450 people to enjoy performances in air-conditioned environment, and 650 to enjoy it in a peripheral sort of way. The whole pavilion opens up, dismantles. It's half underground, half above ground. It's half covered, half uncovered. So there are lots of binary arguments or spaces that are being established to create a lot of interesting uses and multi-utilities of the space. It's used for seminars. It was used for performances, for art installations. It allows people to look in on a performance without necessarily turning their cell phones off or not enjoying the fact that they're amongst the branches of these very, very old trees. And a lot of us, when we think of cities, always imagine ourselves as being very permanent, owned people who have stake in a city. But a large number of our city dwellers don't have stake, and they live on the peripheries and slums. And one of the primary ways of distinguishing that is access to water, and therefore to sewerage. So this is a project called Project Samman that we started off in 2012, working with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the municipal authorities of Bhubaneswar and Cuttack. And the idea was to build around 120 community toilets for various slum settlements, 120 slum settlements across the Twin Cities, for which, while we were designing, we realized that if you want to create situations where open defecation is discouraged, we need to understand what are the gaps in user experience for community facilities. Please understand, community toilets are stopgap. At the end of the day, all of us deserve our own personal toilets. There are huge advantages for that. But as stopgaps, how do we work to improve the experience of using community facilities so that we discourage the use of discourage open defecation? For which we undertook a lot of studies with settlements in Odisha and Cuttack, where we evolved the design based on what exactly, how people actually defecate. What is their defecation behavior? What is their ablution behavior? When do they go to the community facility? How does that tie up with their daily work cycle? How do women behave in community facilities? How do men behave in community facilities? And to evolve a robust design where we are able to build an innovation. For example, one of the mandates given to us was to encourage hand washing. We realized that a lot of men firstly, a lot of people in Odisha don't feel necessarily clean after washing their hands, but after using a community facility, but also feel the need to wash their feet. So we needed to design hand and foot washing structures for that. To encourage men to wash their hands after urinals, we provided washing facilities just above the urinal, and the runoff was used to wash the urinal. And we evolved these. Now these are being rolled out in Cuttack and Odisha, and they're being used quite enthusiastically, and we're very, very satisfied with the results of our innovations in this. I'm also we are also contributors to a collective called Pakka.in, and you can check that out online, wherein we try and build base of the line infrastructure in villages. This is an example of a community toilet built in a small village outside Bodh Gaya called Durgapur. This is meant for women and children. And as you can see here, the innovation was to actually create masonry units out of waste material picked up from Bodh Gaya, plastic waste that a tourist center generates, and use that as compression masonry blocks to build the toilet. We are currently in the process of building an akhada in a village just outside Delhi in a place called Malakpur near Meerut. which is extremely rural, sugarcane territory. The people here have a certain connection to the soil, they're agrarian, but a bulk of them, the sense of bodybuilding has resulted in them getting caught up in a lot of urban crime, a lot of urban politics. And there is a cycle, vicious cycle that the elders in that village wish to break. So they felt that if we could give mat wrestling facilities in the village, it would help keep the youth within the village, not take them to the city. So our work is in process, it's in progress. We're trying to create a community akhada, which also doubles up as a panchayat space, which creates a community facility that is self-maintained. We intend to make this out of earth, rammed earth, because a lot of their rituals of soil preparation, the pehelwans, so the pehelwans are expected to build this facility themselves. Final project, it's at the edge of human construction and nature. This is in a place called Amgadi, which was a washed out mango orchard in the foothills of Uttarakhand. Every rain there is exposed to landslides. So we need to stabilize this. The idea here was to build a resort, an eco resort that would work off the principle that this land was originally forest. You try and rewild it by stabilizing the soil, the water, the way it moves, and then locating the places to stay within it rather than the other way. And this is what it's resulted in. The wilderness has come back. It allows you to spend time in this resort absolutely as if you were in the middle of a forest. Views like this. And just to round it all off, I'd like to end by saying that I feel in the coming 20 years, we're going to be looking at streets, our own streets in our various towns and cities, as sites for commerce and entertainment, and sites from which there's a lot of economic production and consumption happening. It's not happening in buildings anymore. It never had, but now that's coming more to the front. Resource generation like electricity, water supply is going to be more disaggregated. We're going to have to look at not centralized systems of generation and dispersal, but more disaggregated systems, closer loops, smaller geographical units that self-sustain on this. The idea of material moving from things that are plastic to things that are ceramic. What do I mean by that? That there is a lot more emphasis now, even in scientific research and technology, in trying to look at semiconductivity, so on and so forth. The idea is that a ceramic material is something that can get back to its nature of being part of the soil faster, rather than getting into systems where we are extracting rare metals from the geosphere and processing it to put a lot of atmospheric pollution in the air to get a high energy embodied energy product like plastic. Ceramics can evolve in much more lower embodied energy. The next 20 years are going to be very, very vocal. We've all got devices that allow us to create our own content. This is where a lot of design and architecture needs to focus on multiplicity of ideas and the ability to project those ideas. The last two are really go hand in glove. We are now looking at more decentralized, disaggregated plays in which we create resource reservoirs for communal advantage. And a lot of that is going to be self-built rather than have developers and agencies. We're going to have to look at people doing things themselves, building themselves. And we need to think of ways of facilitating that, even if that is with a profit motive, because that's where the future lies. So I'll end with that. This is the four of us now. Wherever when I started it, we're now joined by Shruti and Khyati. Please visit our website, Anagram Architects, or join us on Instagram and Facebook on the same handle. And you'll be able to follow our journey in the next, say, 2 decades or so, at least, if not more, where we discover newer things about the nature of our urbanization and how ecology and technology tie into that. I'll stop there, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Architect Madhav Raman, for that very interesting presentation where you spoke about not only on a bigger scale, the cities, the semi-urban areas, how they are behaving, where we should be, looking out to make them more, bring within the formal arrangement of, developing our cities. As you rightly said, many a times we just, there are pockets of unorganized semi-urban areas which do not get proper attention from the authorities as well, and that is where the attention should be. Your case studies about the projects, how passive design and technology and also the people lifestyle has been kind of intertwined to come out with some fantastic design. So design is not only about designing but also about a lot of many other factors like you spoke about. And also in next 20 years, yes, as you rightly said, we'll be seeing a lot of changes happening. So thanks for that wonderful presentation. Mr. Yadav, what do you have to say about that entire, what we just saw?
Yeah, Sapna, I'm really amazed at the, diversity of projects that uh, architect Madhav Raman's firm and the team is doing. It's really heartening to see this variety. And I would say first and foremost that, Madhav is the first, Indian architect on our platform. And seeing his work, I actually would say that I did not know much about the firm and the work that they do. I'm really amazed, and I'm happy that he's the first Indian designer on our platform. So thank you again, Madhav, for being here. uh, the first question, I which came to my mind while I was seeing the presentation was, you design these buildings, right from office to residence to museums and even toilets. It Some of the buildings, not everywhere, is technology used in bringing wellness to the occupants, to the environment, and how the whole the occupants and the whole structure, how do they communicate with the environment? Is technology used there to make life simple, easier, convenient in these spaces? And how do you use that technology to
Yeah,
make these best practices?
I'm actually, you will permit me a little bit of time here because this is an area of particular interest in our practice. I'm the guy who's the geek. So I'm the techno nerd. I'm the guy who keeps urging moves towards technology. Now I'll give you a sense of what I have. I think the Indian technological context is actually very, very interesting. Um, in Europe and in first world nations, technology has been led by innovation in defense and large scale industry. In India, it has actually been led by the idea of communication and entertainment. So essentially, the high tech work which is consumed by the end consumer is based on products that give them access to information communication technology. City building and construction technology, unfortunately, in this country has stagnated to the point where it was introduced by the British in the 1920s. We've not innovated on materials beyond that because after that we've become part of the global cement based construction technologies. We didn't have the push in the industrial thing to innovate into steel construction technology. We've only just started. And now, therefore, we need to do a lot of things simultaneously in order to achieve a certain upfrontness, because I'm very, very positive about the relationship architecture and technology have in the coming. I think architecture will be one of the lead, like defense has been. Architecture and construction and city building is going to be one of the lead things where innovations will then impact other sectors, like innovations in defense have impacted electronics and electricals and the World Wide Web and so on and so forth. So to answer your questions, I think they have a very like an umbilical connection. It starts with the construction material. It ends with the consumption of resources, like your area of business, which is electrical resources. Whether it is fed by a photovoltaic off-grid mechanism or whether it is fed by a on-grid, because we are looking at a hybrid of this at least for the next 20 years. We're not going to completely get off a centralized system. We're not going to completely get onto a unless there's a climate catastrophe, we're not going to go off the grid. So a lot of the interesting combinations there are very same applies to connectivity, home automation, so on and so forth. The way we are now consuming entertainment, for example, or way we are consuming content on the internet is soon going to start defining how we live our lives, what we see as private, public. Like I'm facing my cupboard right now. You guys all have blinders on you. So a lot of how we look at our world around us is a large part of that is now being taken up with how it looks like on a screen. We used to design television set design for news networks when we started in the 2000s, for NDTV, for Aaj Tak, and so on and so forth. And we find that a lot of the way people are now thinking of their spaces remind us of what producers used to talk about when they were producing television shows for news. So there is a lot of this that we need to keep connected with. Um, Environment, I think it's important for technology now to play the role of connecting human beings and their notions of their lives, their lifestyles, uh, to nature physically. And a lot of that has to be a negotiated, mediated, because a lot of people have to be nursed out of ideas of comfort and convenience and be told that no, there is value in doing things slightly differently, maybe not just comfortable in a different way or convenient in a different way, but is something that makes you empathize with another living thing that is not human. And we see that now under lockdown, people are treating their plants, house plants, like they were pets. People are, making connections with their morning jogs and birds that they see. There are lots of these things that are happening that, in a gym, you don't have birds. But if the gyms are closed and you're jogging in a park, then you see birds and squirrels. So then you say, oh, it's a good thing I have this next to my home. But then how many of us have that luxury? So it kind of rolls back. And so, sorry, that's why I said, give me a little bit of time. Complex answer, but I think there's a lot to be done, basically.
Good,
That's
good.
true.
Thanks. Yeah.
That's
Yes,
right.
Sapna, over to you.
One question is, according to you, Madhav, what are the top three trends that you would like, top of the mind that comes you in terms of sustainable technology that we are going to see going forward?
I think top three. Okay. So the top most thing, which is at an emergency crisis level, we need to look at technologies that impact sewage and waste disposal in our cities and our settlements that are not cities also. This is a crisis level because we've desperately short on drinking water to be able to occupy these cities. The second thing I think is of interest to Havells, for example. I think at the second priority I would give is to technologies for sustainability in terms of electrical consumption. I think so far we've talked about petrol prices, diesel prices. Clearly, they've gone out of the wallet size of most Indians. Now is the time to start thinking intelligently about how we are generating, transmitting, consuming, or even wasting electricity. Um, the third is actually got to do with content creation. I think now, before any time earlier in human civilization, we have a situation where more than a majority of individual humans have the ability to put content, create content for consumption by online content, for consumption by other human beings. So the level of interaction is mind-boggling. And I think a lot of the logistics issues don't necessarily have to mean that we provide products to the end consumer. A lot of the logistical issues will solve if we start imagining potentials or profit of making opportunities in providing ideas to consumers. And especially if they are open-ended ideas that can then be built on open source types of platforms where financial benefits can also be distributed in a more amenable way, because the disruption one sees in world politics right now is largely because of a huge inequality financially. So I think these are the three areas that I would look at
Okay,
focusing
so
on.
technologies for water efficiency, for sanitation efficiency, technology for energy efficiency, and technology, the online communication, the communication technology. These are the three top technologies architect Madhav Raman says is going to change, lot of our way we are working and living going forward. And rightly so, we have had been able to, collaborate with so many foreign architects only because of online communication, which we wouldn't have thought of earlier. We would have done physical event and try to bring as many experts possible. My next question from our audience goes to both of you, Vivek and Madhav, is about home. As Madhav mentioned earlier, that homes have gone a complete transformation with work from home, and especially in cities, congested cities like Mumbai, where it is a challenge of working from home with online studies of children going on in this. So one is the transformation. Where do you see this transformation leading, and what are the reinventions do you envisage in this segment? We'll start with you, Madhav.
Well, work from home is was actually an idea waiting to happen. It's just basically been fast forwarded extremely quickly by the pandemic. So I think that the basic change is a change in perception. Our own notions of home, our own notions of privacy in a home have changed, and the idea of a home as a capital asset, I think, because we've always focused on homes and their real estate value comes from their location in terms of transport, transmit, transition. So you have these notions of what a home is. One of the important notions of it is something that is a capital asset that then gets handed down the generations. That's our family structures are going through a change. So what, if you look at it in any home now, with 4 or 5 individuals having online sessions, occupying different 4 corners, even the home gets re-territorialized. So for example, I'm now talking to you from what used to be our sense of a guest bedroom, but honestly I don't foresee having that many guests anymore. So unofficially it's become the place where I hold my video conference. It's far enough from the rest of my home, I can, no distractions. But equally I've territorialized this, so in effect it has become my, I have my arrangement screen, yeah, this, that. Now not too many people are allowed to really change this around. So something as simple as that helps us understand the notional changes we are going through in our heads, and that will give rise to more architectural opportunities to interpret those.
Okay, Yadav, your take on that.
Yeah, I think what is changing today is basically because of a lot of people are suddenly forced to work from home because of this situation. And as Madhav was saying, that finding difficult to find that corner which can turn into an office. There is no comfortable chair, there is no comfortable table in the house. A lot of bedrooms don't even have a working table. So I think a lot of people now are thinking how they can actually make their home suitable for working from home, not just for them, because there's not just one member. There is a son or a daughter who needs space for studying online. Wife, if she's working, she needs space for working for her area. And then husband. So how do you get them in a house which is small? So not just existing homes need to change. Even new homes which will be coming up, designers have to think. So my question would be to Madhav, what is he thinking and what is team thinking when a new project comes up? So
So
our experience, yeah, I mean, let me just
I'll tell
finish.
you,
Sorry, Madhav.
we are rediscovering things that our grandparents used to talk about when they used to reminisce about homes, especially homes they'd left behind or homes they'd been forced out of to come and forced to stay with
Yeah,
us because their health wouldn't allow otherwise.
correct.
These are ideas of, say, for example, the barsati, the
Yeah,
balcony, the veranda,
yeah,
ideas of the Chandni. There are spaces in Delhi homes that used to have an ability to not have any interference from your neighbor, but you could spend your evening under an open sky and look at the moon. There's
yeah.
some very so because we are now cooped, I feel we're not cooped up in our homes. I think we were cooped up in a certain lifestyle where we were caught in interiors. We were caught inside a mall. We were caught inside our gated community. We were caught inside our home. We emphasis was on safety, security. Focus was on a large screen TV. Now, you mentioned different workspaces. I was going to say across the generations, look at how the screen sizes have compressed. So the eldest takes over the largest screen, and the youngest does a whole lot more from a really small screen. So I just feel that my perspective is we are now going to have to rediscover ways that have more social meanings for ourselves. So that formal living room, no one's coming in that. They never were. No one ever came. If they were close enough to the family to visit, they would use your informal areas. They wouldn't use your formal. You throw one party, if you were particularly social, one party a week. Now that's gone down to 2 parties in 6 months. So there is that huge real estate piece called the formal living room that can be reinvented. Bedrooms you have this whole thing of a dresser. Like I said, this is a cupboard. So you'll suddenly start discovering uses because the lighting here is the best, and I have all the light coming on my face. So you'll start discovering these uses for spaces, and yeah, so it'll be a fun ride, I guess.
Okay.
But yeah, right, Madhav. So, I mean, one more experience I would like to share that, we are seeing suddenly a demand for, retrofit automation coming in from a lot of people who have started working from home. So that's one change we are witnessing. And there will be many more trends that we will see, which will be inspired by this. And a lot of people still live in that hope that life will be back to normal. And I mean, it's already 1.5 years gone in this situation. We don't know how much more time. So normalcy, I don't know if this is the new normal or if this is the trend to continue. But I see that a lot of things will change, a lot of habits will change, and they will change for good. Yeah.
Okay, so both our speakers agree that there is a lot of change in people's belief systems, lifestyles that are happening. We'll take one last question, which is about buildings are getting taller and complexer, and which also includes high energy use with vertical transportation, HVAC needs, electrical needs. So, do you see that sweet spot between modern and complex buildings and low energy or energy efficient use? Is there a sweet spot, Madhav?
Yeah, I think like my talk indicated, I believe the sweet spot will be in that proto city in these various, because we don't have a binary. So it's a question of land, really speaking, and how land is utilized to achieve densities. Now, densities are defined by where you live and where you work, and how much part of the day you spend in each, because that has an immediate energy outcome. So we have now discovered that those of us who are now rich enough are able to and are engaged in tertiary sector jobs, economic jobs, are now it's possible for us to work uh, literally from anywhere in the world. We've discovered that it was always there, but we've discovered it, and it's now not so daunting an exercise. Okay. uh, I would argue, therefore, we will try and hunt for more meaningful use of our investment, and we will not start hunting for these holiday homes and second homes and homes for investment and so on and so forth. That will ease up the real estate market a little. There'll be correction, but that will happen. The question is now, how do we start building new homes and offices and so on and so forth? So there is going to be a compression in commercial space. People won't want that kind of real estate. We now have to start rethinking redevelopment projects of how those large, because commercial space in cities take up a lot of land because they require a lot of infrastructure, trunk sewerage, trunk electricity, trunk parking. These are big, big demands. So there's a lot of disaggregation there that needs to be thought through. High-rise living will always, the thing is, finally, at the end of the day, the value of the real estate results in how high you go. If there's a crash in the real estate value, the others won't work out. You'll much rather hunt for new ground, which is what will happen in most, because all cities want to develop. No one wants to become backward. So if the point is, as people who are involved in development, are we focusing only on the biggest of the big cities, or can we open up our view into seeing what can be done elsewhere? And in that you will find various arguments that are from extremely low rise to extremely high rise and various stages in the middle. So my sense is we're going to be a complex city with various individually simplistic ways of living.
Okay, okay. So no need to go too high or too modern or too complex. Let's find out alternate solutions. Each
Yeah.
city needs to
And one
develop a
solution will
development.
not apply. So let's
Yes,
have more choice on the menu. I feel
yeah,
that's the
that's right. That's right. Vivek, do you see that, how do you see, the challenges and opportunities between modern and complex buildings and low energy use?
I think the big challenge for any building coming up now is to have low energy usage, efficient usage of space, efficient usage of material. Any new building, first the stats that today more than 50% of the electrical energy usage is in buildings, be it residential or be it commercial. And the big energy guzzler in these buildings is your lighting and AC load. So these buildings will have to use technology to reduce that energy bill, by usage of efficient lighting, sometimes smart lighting, connected lighting, and even the air conditioning technology. With better equipment, with better technology, they have to be very efficiently selected and designed. So my view is that companies like us, which are manufacturer equipment, will have to definitely play a big role in reducing that energy bill, not just by way of making these equipment more efficient, but also by encouraging alternate energy sources like solar. Of course, it is being made mandatory by governments, in most of the buildings, that certain amount of energy has to come through alternate sources. But the specifiers have to play big role. Architects have to play a big role. My leading question to Madhav would be, when you design spaces, how much of stress you lay on, let's say, selection of lighting, whether intelligent lighting is being used in your projects or not. And of course, how do you look at the total energy bill coming down for that particular building? So,
Yeah,
what do you do in that area?
as our architecture has evolved, our design sensibility has evolved in the past 20 years, you'll see that there's a strong emphasis on this idea of interaction with the outside. We've never really believed in having a very solid divide between inside and outside. And that has direct impact on light and on energy consumption on air conditioning. So we've always felt that, considering the diversity of climate, the diversity of time of use. I mean, we are no longer, for a long time now, we've no longer been a society that goes to sleep at 8 o'clock, you know. So a lot of our daytime, nighttime activities have to be reconciled with how this space interacts with light when it's available, with cooler air, where cooler climate when it is available, where pollution also drops. Like right now, we have excellent air quality, luckily in Delhi. These are times where we need to turn off these things and open up. Like right now, there are no lights operating. It's all operating out of daylight. So we've always had this sense. I think the critical jump going forward we're going to make is, like you rightly pointed out, certain intelligence being built into these devices that can recognize occupancy. So we have worked indirectly in that field, in that we work very closely with an entity called Experiential Design Lab, which is based out of Delhi, and where we are looking at making smart spaces that are self-aware. So you have sensors, RFIDs, motion sensors, lasers, infrared sensors that are able to count people, understand behavior patterns. You can feed these into algorithms, and they can actually tie up with things like Alexa. So if you have automation devices that can take direct spoken instruction, and they are able to also monitor occupation, time of occupancy, patterns over a day, over a year, you're able to start getting the bill to make it not necessary for human beings to remember to put off lights anymore, because that is our biggest failing. We are lazy. We don't do things even if we know that there's a protocol to be followed. So if we can try and get buildings and spaces to become more smart and intelligent and self-aware, then we can do a lot to take that entire headache off the human mind and move it into a more intelligent system, more intelligent than humans, something that's artificially intelligent.
Okay.
Thanks.
That's fantastic. So it is technology, design, and lifestyle. So these are all three interconnected. And that was one very informative and interesting conversation that we just had. So thanks, Architect Raman and Mr. Yadav. And I'm sure our viewers had, some very valuable takeaways from today's session. Let me now bring on screen Mr. Remal Behel, Head for Enterprise Business, Havells India Limited, to give the thank you note of the day. Mr. Remal Behel is the Head for Enterprise Business and engages with architects, consultants, interior designers, industry, government and infrastructure, and key commercial project stakeholders. He's an electrical engineer with 26 years of experience, and his expertise lies in enterprise solutions, business development, strategic planning, and sales. Mr. Bell, you had been listening to the entire conversation and presentation, so how do you summarize that?
Good afternoon, all. Wow, what an interesting discussion. Uh, First of all, on behalf of Havells, I think it's an honor and a privilege for me to, be part of such a discussion, and really to thank Architect Raman for his views and his thoughts and whatever projects and entities he shared with us. Uh, I think this discussion has really, opened up our minds on the, cities in their present form falling apart, and the need for a more, globalized and hyper connected and climate changed cities in the future. So, I mean, the case studies which were shown, like the Cleft House project, the Kudaran project, the Akhada facilities, especially the Eco Resort project, were really, eye openers in my view. And each project in itself was a unique project and a memorable, I would say, architectural experience. Uh, I really like the unique approach and solutions which are proposed by architect Madhav, and especially his thoughts on the need for hybrid systems, on the need for reducing electrical consumption, on the efficient use of electricity, and also the use of technology for sustainable cities of the future. So I mean, we at Havells are also committed to providing such energy efficient electrical products and solutions for such world class projects, and which will push the boundaries of architecture as well as technology. So we at Havells look forward to working with architects such as Madhav Raman for such projects. And really, I feel that he has really shown us the way forward, for in the future. Uh, I would also like to take this opportunity to thank all the participants who've taken time out for this edX series platform. And I would also like to thank the organizing team from Havells as well as from Reality Plus for all your efforts. So thank you so much and have a great day. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Mr. Behel, for expressing that note of appreciation, and sincere thanks on behalf of Realty Plus and Havells India to our speaker. Thanks, Mr. Yadav, as well, for being part of this session, sharing your views as a solution provider, and for that very interesting conversation with our speaker of the day. Most of all, our sincere thanks to our awesome audience for being here, sharing their time, and sending in the questions which we presented to Architect. Because of the limitation of time, we could not take much of the questions, but I once again thank our speaker of the day, Architect Madhav Raman, co-founder and principal Anagram Architects, for sharing his knowledge with the Indian and global design fraternity. So, dear viewers, to know more about Realty Plus, do get in touch with Ms. Tripti Kedia, publisher and business head Realty Plus, at tripti@exchangeformedia.com. And also do keep watching this space as we bring to you yet another acclaimed design expert. Till then, thanks and goodbye. Thanks, Architect Madhav Raman, for being here with us. We will, stay connected for more collaborations. Thanks, Mr. Vivek Yadav, for initiating this series of collaboration between the industry. Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
Thanks to our viewers.